Hey guys, welcome to a bonus episode of The Sweet House. This one is a good one because I am sitting down with Nashville's newest mayor, Freddie O'Connell, and this man is booked and busy this season, this holiday season, but he made time to come sit in the Sweet House and talk to us about who he is behind the scenes of running Nashville. So I'm just going to jump right to it because I absolutely loved your LinkedIn update because I think everybody, when they start a new career, just aspires to make that big announcement on LinkedIn. And I'm going to read yours for everybody. And you guys go look at his LinkedIn because I just loved it. He said, "Some personal news. I got a new job. All the best to HealthStream and my incredible colleagues, including Matthew Wilson, who hired me. I was planning a long career there, but a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity came along." Like, how did it feel to write that? Because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for sure, especially to be the mayor of Nashville, such a bustling city that's literally winning awards across the board. So how did it feel to sign off from HealthStream and to just be able to write this? Was that relieving, exciting? What were you thinking?
There is some legitimate bittersweetness to it because Matt was great in bringing me into HealthStream. And he even acknowledged he was kind of pitching me on the company, but it turns out everything he pitched was correct. They had a great culture. I wound up leading an incredible team that was really hard to leave, but we had also put a lot of work into making sure that my transition out of being a full-time employee, which I did at the very start of this year, was graceful. But, you jump into something like this where it is very uncertain what the outcome is going to be. And so there's a little bit of a leap of faith anybody who runs for office takes in what is possible. And then after election night, it was like, oh yeah, I have to go kind of resign from what I was doing before. And so
yeah. So did you put in a 2 weeks notice?
So what we did was last year, as I thought pretty seriously about whether to run citywide at all, Matt and I and some others at the company talked, and again, credit to them as an organization because they knew what I was doing when I started. I was already on the Metro Council. They said, let us know when you make the decision, what the timeline is. We will work with you. And so we did all of those things. We kind of prepared for a leadership transition, making sure that the projects that I was deeply involved in or leading on had other kind of key people ready to pick them up. And then we just, I kind of went on contract, which meant that as of the start of this year, I was going to check in on some meetings, but it quickly became, okay, I haven't checked my email in a few weeks now, and so, but it worked out great. And sort of the last interaction I had with people, we were just kind of talking about the handoff process, but I checked in with Matt actually to kind of make sure we could get my equipment back over to the company and all that stuff. Cause I joined when they were in COVID, right? Yeah. And 100% remote. And then started going back into the office just a little over a year ago, I guess. And it was, that process of winding it down and having worked with great people, that's always tough. And I'm also very lucky to have had a career where even on election night, some of the people who had given me my first internships were there in the room, right? And so I think that was also great, was to have had so many of my former colleagues across a long career in the technology sector in Nashville be very supportive of what I was doing in terms of politics and policy.
So a lot of times it's not the easiest thing to navigate when somebody is working a career and then they're also trying to manage a small business or they're trying to run for public office. So I think your story is really cool in that aspect because you had conversations with the company that you were actually working with in regards to your political aspirations. So what was it like to tell your colleagues and your boss and everybody that you were going to do the big deed and go on this journey to become the mayor?
Yeah, and even that is an evolution because I was kind of stunned back 15 years ago now. I got a call when I was a director of technology for what is now the Nashville Post. And one of Mayor Dean's senior advisors asked me if I wanted to be on the Nashville MTA board of directors. And it was kind of one of those, check the phone number, make sure I'm not being pranked moments. But that also became a constant conversation with that being in the workforce, but also I always wanted to protect my flexibility to be able to be civically engaged because these were things I cared a lot about. So I'd already worked with an employer on that because those tended to be midday board meetings a couple times a month, occasionally having other public meetings. As I became chair of that board, eventually having a little bit more of a public profile. And so that was a whole journey. Then same thing, I was at a little software company when I thought, okay, this work in the space of transit has made me want to go make sure we can start to fund all of the policy pieces of this that were so meaningful to me. And so I started to think about running for Metro Council. And my employers at the time said a similar thing where it was like, be transparent with your team, make sure to cover your bases and go for it. And so started doing that. And Hellstream was very similar in that regard in the sense of, I think a lot of people sort of expected that it was a long shot. But
did you feel those doubts that people around you from your colleagues and people that you worked with did you start to feel a lot of the doubt around the long shot of you becoming the mayor?
Not really. And it wasn't even that it was doubts. It was more of a like, okay, sure, go do it. And we'll see you in a few months, you know. But I think as they started to see, because you kind of bring the same intensity and you hope quality of work into what you're doing day by day. And so I think they had seen the way I worked with people in the organization. And I think as they saw the campaign take off, they were like, oh yeah, this happens in other spaces, other domains as well. And it was interesting because before I did it, after having our household conversation, which was the one that mattered most, because if that had been a no-go, there would have been no second conversation. But what I kind of challenged myself to do after that household conversation was to then have 100 more conversations. So I basically did 100 conversations in 100 days to kind of kick the tires on it. And what was most interesting about that was nobody said, and this was people from across my entire life, people that had known me since I was born, people I had worked with, people I had done nonprofit work with, people with all kinds of relationships with me in the community. Not a single person discouraged me. You heard maybe somebody say, I'm not sure you can raise the money, or the other version of that, which is, if you can raise the money, you'll do great. But nobody said, what are you thinking? This is insane. Like, this is, you should not do this. And so I think after getting through all of that, having the ability to have a conversation in the workplace with teammates, colleagues, supervisors, et cetera, it worked out.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. My aunt actually ran for Congress in Indianapolis in the Carmel district. And it was a feat. I mean, she was very close, and our whole entire family is very proud of her. She worked as an executive at Xerox for years. And then this is my mom's little sister. My mom's here today, you guys. She's behind the scenes. But she ran for office, and everybody was really involved in like helping her get the word out. And she did it 2 times in a row, and she didn't win. But even still, I think the process of running for office and having those conversations, like you mentioned, the home conversation, and then the other 100 conversations are also pivotal points. And I also read Michelle Obama's book where she talks about the conversation she had whenever President Obama decided to run for office. And it's life-changing for a lot of things that can happen in your household.
The other thing that I think to that point was interesting is I didn't put a lot of pressure on the company, right? Like I didn't go walk around the C-suite saying, hey, will you all contribute to the campaign? Because to me, the company was already kind of giving me the gift of enabling me and empowering me to go do this. And so it was almost like we kept our space. And so I did my job over here. And then through the end of the year, we kind of made both things happen. And then we wound up having enough success with the campaign where I kind of said, I need to put this part on pause and go run hard after this.
Yeah. And I think the key takeaway for that is that you still did your job and you did it well. And so now we're in this stage of life where everyone wants to work their full-time job and they also want to do their side gig, but they're not sure what percentage of effort they're going to give to either place. So I think, how did you determine which percentage of effort you were going to bring to those sectors?
So for the past 15 years, I think that's what's been interesting is I've almost had this, you have three circles. You kind of have, for me, I had personal life, which is anchored around family and friends, had professional life, which was primarily in the technology sector, and then having this kind of civic political life where there's a lot of policy, but it was kind of this constant question of which one is the side hustle, right? Because I'm invested in both. I still love software and technology. I still love building things. I still love the teams that I've gotten to be a part of. For me, I think it was the ability to push things where they had to live. So sometimes I spent a year at a startup just before COVID, and I wound up having a lot more discipline about not letting the council work interfere, because we had to be very intense during traditional business hours. So I might take a meeting during lunch or say, hey, we're in this startup office. It's a co-working space. Can you come meet here now? Or, there was a greenway around the corner where it'd be like, all right, if you want to do a media interview with me, you're going to meet me over here. Like we're going to go do it over here. And now I've said to some people who have said, you must be overwhelmed. And it's like, well, the thing that is actually helping me stay in balance right now is, even in keeping a very busy schedule, now I'm doing one thing, right? Instead of having this tension between the side hustle. Right. So I spent 15 years feeling like that professional and personal life is always in tension. But we set it up too. I mean, I knew when I ran for council the first time, I wasn't going to lean into that without being very rigorous about preserving the family time. And so we succeeded in that in the campaign back in 2015, again in 2019, I think, until the very home stretch where this got even more kind of consuming. We've had a pretty good balance at the household level. And so, that's what's interesting now is I can look at every day. There is a very, we have a process for dealing with my calendar. And so again, I can kind of protect the family time I need to around that. But it's hard to get those allocations. I think what worked for me is, one, in technology, if you've got an internet connection, you can almost always do the things you are needing to do. Right. And so I can be anywhere. I can do it any time of day or night. In fact, when I was at the smaller technology company a few years back, when I was first on Metro Council, I kind of helped the company give the illusion of having a 24/7 presence, because I could be on calls with India and Australia after the girls had gone to bed. And it was kind of that makeup time for I might have been working on something council related early in the day. But you could work out a schedule that was pretty flexible. So I found across that period, it's really just understanding where your time is allocated, how either of the two tasks of being a professional or being in public service, when those things, because if I can reply to 100 emails after 9 o'clock, I've gotten to do dinner and bedtime with the family, and now I'm going to go try to get my inbox down as much as I can.
Absolutely. It's all about like making sure your time management is efficient and you can schedule every hour of your day. As my mom, who's here with me, has witnessed even today of my own schedule, being a toddler mom and working mom and podcaster and all of that stuff. And then I'm right there with you because I was actually working on an international project for Peloton recently. I just finished that up where I was launching their app in Austria, Australia, UK, and Germany. So my manager in the UK would be up, and then I'd be up at like 5 o'clock in the morning before rain.
Yep.
And then I was able to be efficient with my time then to talk to her before the US is even like getting our wheels turning over here. So to me, that is just, it's also very important. But then you spoke to something else that I thought was cool, is giving people that option. And I think now that we are past the pandemic, a lot of companies are making people come back into the office, and they're forcing people to kind of work the 9-to-5 schedule again. So what are your thoughts on that?
So we've actually had some conversations about that in the mayor's office, because through the years, I have always found that being present is preferable. And that's for me. And I think it's kind of the expectation, but the flexibility. And so where HealthStream landed professionally, where I was we couldn't even go to the office in the height of COVID, right? It was 100% remote, and gradually became, kind of a hybrid model where instead of it just being a 9-to-5, it was the office became a resource center. And people started coming back, but also a lot of people had moved during that time. Now, the work of the city can be a little bit different. And I do think people still have some expectation that some things get done during traditional business hours. But we know that some people have roles. One, we know people are not going to be in their office at the desk every day because people have portfolios, like our director of neighborhoods and community engagement. I mean, that is not a desk job fundamentally.
Exactly.
Some people, though, our coordinator of Hub Nashville, I mean, she's working on a technology process that's very connected to people, but she has to be very engaged with that, the notifications that come in and managing a technology platform, but also the people who are interacting with that platform. So that one is a little more connected to traditional business flows and hours. And I think that's really it. Is for me, it's more about how an overall team works and what the roles are in terms of how you structure that. So we're a little more, I think we have a little more need for presence because we do get a lot of value out of the hallway conversation and meetings that happen. And WebEx and other technologies have made those kinds of things even more recent. And I will say, whereas before I might have been more likely to want a full office presence, I think actually the HealthStream experience and working through high functioning teams being 100% remote kind of showed you that there is plenty of opportunity for flexibility. So I wouldn't call the mayor's office right now a hybrid work environment, but it is one that we've got a lot of people with young kids, and that alone, even before COVID existed, there are times when you've got to,
Take off.
You've got to be there for a sick day. You've got to be there for a soccer practice.
Rain joined me for plenty of conference calls. So I'd say Rain's here today, y'all. We have got a new team member. So we talked a lot about technology, your background in technology, and you stepping into this new role of being a mayor. But I wanted to ask you, because you also mentioned this on LinkedIn, that you always were interested in computers and technology since you were a kid. Were you also always interested in your civic duty and politics as a kid?
Not exactly. In fact, I was one of the people with the poor judgment at the age of 18 that caused me not to want to even register to vote.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a journey for me. I think, I guess I thought there were some things about political ideas that I would say were closer to philosophy that I was interested in. But I grew up in an age where you experience politics through what is kind of like what cable news is now, where you might hear a faraway politician give a speech. Now, I would read the Tennessean as a kid and keep up with local news, but it was almost like I hadn't connected that politics doesn't have to be this faraway thing, that you can have community engagement. That didn't happen until I was already back in Nashville as an adult. So I didn't get registered to vote until I was in my 20s, and I try to encourage today's young people not to make the mistake I did, because there is so much power, particularly, and I think young people have started to demonstrate that more recently.
Absolutely.
That given the imbalance of how reliable voting is among older people, and yet how much the world is going to have to be prepared for where younger people are, right? If we watch today's young people not even want to drive and be with their friends or on their phones or whatever, we have some obligation to engage in that. But if that is not being demanded of us by a younger generation, it is harder to make those moves, even if you know that's what their preferences are.
For sure. I've always had an interest in politics, and I actually interned for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation with Congressman Steve Cohen in Memphis. And he was great to work for. I lived in D.C. for a little bit doing that. And so, and I also feel like my generation came along during the Obama era. And so there were countless voting drives and social media, and his whole social media strategy really got everybody that was coming into college between 2007 to 2012, 2013, that whole era was full of young people flooding to get voter registration IDs. And so speaking from experience, I think my generation definitely got registered, but I think we're losing an interest in politics. And that was another reason why I wanted to bring you on, because I was like, I want to also bring life to politics by way that we are all people and all have a civic duty. Like, even if you're taking your kid to ballet, there's some level of politics involved in you driving your kid to ballet, down to your infrastructure on how you got there, which was one of Congressman Cohen's major initiatives was infrastructure throughout Tennessee. So it's interesting to me. It's always been interesting. I've kind of stepped away from politics. I vote every year, whatever election I can, I'm there. But I also am just busy with life and working and that kind of stuff. And so it's easy to not be involved in politics.
And I think my request for people would not be even that you have to follow anything close to my journey, but I do feel like as we work to show our work, right? As we try to demonstrate, I mean, I didn't run for this office to just have a title. I ran because I want more families in Nashville to be, one, able to afford to live here, two, to have that infrastructure that lets them have the quality of life and the safety that they need to have that quality of life. And there are things we can and should make progress on, but we have to then turn around and show that. But we want that when we see that progress being made, we hope that also returns people's civic interest, because there are going to be about 3 times as many people vote for president next year as voted for mayor this year. And yet I can tell you from the way we, even being on council for 8 years, our local budgets, the way we put capital out in the world, the way we design projects, the way we deliver accountability, most Nashvillians will have a much higher probability of meeting me in person than they ever will any president of the United States. And similarly, the impact of our budgets, the impact of the things we do on the ground here in Nashville are going to affect your life in Nashville more than whatever any president of the United States does.
I think that's also key. It's key on so many levels. So it's key to me on the education level, the post-secondary education, college education, all of it. And I say that because you'd be surprised how many people don't even know the branches of government, local, state, and federal, or just who their commissioners are, or who their councilmen are, or just anything like that. And so to me, I wish that we could somehow even break it down so people understand the importance of getting involved in your neighborhood association, or knowing who represents you and how to reach out to them. And so that's one of the things that I want wanted to ask you is, how do the citizens of Nashville get involved in their civic duties, essentially?
Yeah, so I'll say one thing to that. We tried every time when I was on Metro Council that I got an invitation to go speak at a school, I would take advantage of it, because I think it is very important for young people, one, to have direct exposure to who is governing, who is leading, and then to be able to explain those kinds of things. I mean, I would usually give some kind of 2-minute breakdown of, hey, here's how your local government works. Here's my role in that. And then that would be the basis for the other discussions we had about what they were interested in and how they could take action on that. So I've been to, USN, Hume Fogg, MLK, all three of those countless times, because they were in the council district I represented, but also the elementary schools, and reading to people and making sure that they also, younger children had some awareness of, hey, here is a person who is helping set our budget, know what's in our classrooms, in our school building, do that. I'll say a couple things. We have one of the greatest things about Nashville and our local government is we have boards and commissions like the MTA board I served on. There are dozens of them. And if you are interested in a thing, there may be an opportunity to get involved in that. They are basically just volunteers. Nashvillians can sign up at any time. So if you are interested in the arts, we have an arts commission. If you are interested in transit, we have a transit board. If you are interested in the way the city gets planned and how development happens, there is a planning commission. These are all incredible things. You can submit your interest to that at hub.nashville.gov. Hub is also a great app for just helping us notice the things that need to be fixed across the city. If you see a street light out, if you see a pothole, if you see a damaged sidewalk, if you see somebody who is experiencing a housing crisis, you can use this platform to help us get better at customer service. And that's actually a great way of participating.
Is Hub a platform that was introduced under your jurisdiction, or was this prior to? I'm a Nashvilleian. I knew nothing about Hub.
No, it's amazing. So we finally integrated it with our 311, but we are taking the next steps. We are trying to push to the 2.0 version of this, because my goal is to make our government as customer focused as it ever has been. But we saw the power of Hub from years ago. I had a colleague on the Metro Council. I think it got introduced around 2016, 2017, but it is a great thing, because one of my colleagues on the Metro Council used to give out his card, and on the back were dozens of different departments and their phone numbers and all this stuff. Well, nobody can remember all those. You shouldn't even want to remember all those. Now our cards all say just Hub Nashville on the back. You can call 311. There's an app for iOS and Android. You can take a picture, send it in, and we try to respond to it. What we're trying to do is make sure it's a little more interactive, gives you a little more transparency about how a request is being handled. Try to make sure that you understand there's a real person on the other side of that request, and just to keep the focus on customer service.
So absolutely. And I love that you're doing that. I've seen a lot of profound things that you've been doing in the community, because you also use social media. So you guys follow him on social media, follow him on Instagram. He's sharing photos, videos, stories, what have you. And that is a great way to connect with Nashville, especially with so many people moving here. Because I feel like we're constantly going to have to re-educate people on all the happenings that are happening in Nashville. I knew nothing about Hub Nashville, and I've been here 7 years. I'm a native Tennessean from Jackson, Tennessee. I've lived in Memphis for 10 years, and now I'm here. And it's constantly sharing what this city is about, because the city is changing. I passed a million cranes in the sky on the way here this morning. I did want to talk about some of the other initiatives that you're working on, because you're actually doing an address tomorrow on Nashville Works, Nashville Grows, and Nashville Moves. And like you mentioned, every Nashvilleian deserves to interact directly with the Metro government, and you kind of want to serve as this epicenter for customer service, if you will. So I actually went on Hub Nashville. That was actually on my list to talk to you about it, so you brought it up. I went on there, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool, because you can just put in a ticket for whatever you need. I'm actually going to put in a ticket for a speed bump in my neighborhood neighborhood
There you
because
go.
I need it.
Traffic calming is one of the most popular programs in Metro right now.
Yes, it is. And, honestly, you guys that are watching or listening, because this will be on YouTube and podcast form, I think that, there's so many things that we all want to happen in this city. And it's a very progressive city. It's moving very fast with the stadium coming, with the East Bank coming, all these things. And kudos to you for furthering Hub Nashville 2.0, because it's something that we definitely need to make sure that we're like capturing the nitty gritty in every neighborhood in this city. I'm on the East Bank side, so yeah, I'm excited to see what all happens. Which Nashville Grows. So Nashville Works, Hub Nashville is under his Nashville Works initiative, and then Nashville Grows. It mentioned the East Bank and all of that work, and so one of the things that I saw on there was few other projects of this scope and transformative potential exist in the United States today. So can you talk about the magnitude of the East Bank project and what that's going to look like?
Yeah, so Oracle has already, even before the Titans conversation, they've got a big, you could call it a public-private partnership, but they've got a massive investment on River North, the north part of the eastern side of the Cumberland River as it kind of comes through downtown. Then we put a multi-billion-dollar deal on the table for the Titans to build a new stadium. And so now Metro is obligated to do two things. We need to make sure that stadium has all the infrastructure necessary to open by 2027, which is the Titans' plan to be playing there by that time. If their construction schedule stays on track, they're our pace car because we have to keep pace with them. We do not want to have local government be the cause of any sort of failure or delay on that project. So there's an importance to that from the standpoint of the contract. But as important, we picked up 100 plus acres of land around the stadium that we are now the master developer for. So to me, it gives us the chance to say, as a city, what do we want and need from infrastructure, connectivity, transit, green space, affordable housing, safe workplaces, good jobs, all of those things all in one spot as we build effectively from scratch what the city of the 21st century is supposed to look like. Then we should be taking those lessons, and this is what that Nashville Grows element is supposed to be all about. We can't only be focused on that. It's a necessary focus, but it's not sufficient to the task of this next 4 years. We have to be taking those same principles and applying them around the entire city. And that's kind of what we have charged that transition committee with, looking at that and coming up with some ideas about how do we keep these things in balance.
And so over the next 4 years or so is when we can expect to see those developments really take off. So a quick question, where will the Titans play in the meantime of all of this happening?
So it's interesting. They will be in their current stadium for the next 3 seasons, and then they will take that next year in 2027 and be playing in the new one. So you will see construction start right next to what is now Nissan Stadium, and they will be building a new Nissan Stadium
right beside it.
And then basically as soon as they are done with construction, you will start to see the old one get demolished and some development. So it is going to feel like a large scale construction zone for quite some time.
So what you're telling us is everybody on this East Bank side is going to feel this just for a little bit.
We are going to do everything we can to minimize disruption because we know growth comes with that. But that's one of the other things. I kind of think how Nashville Works and how Nashville Grows are connected, because what we're supposed to be doing is streamlining our road closures, making sure people know in advance if there is a big detour, and being able to plan around some of this stuff. In fact, it was funny, just a couple weeks after we got elected, there was a sign up about future closures of Korean Veterans Bridge. And I got some very happy East Nashvillians because they were like, this is great, knowing in advance when it's going to close. These are just little things that help Nashvillians be able to work around the growth in their own lives is a big deal. And we want our government very focused on that.
Korean Veterans is very busy.
Yes.
So are there any plans to provide another way into East Nashville across the Cumberland River near the Shelby Park area, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we have looked at that. In fact, we were looking at some federal assistance opportunities under any of CARES Act, American Rescue Plan Act, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I do think, so the River North project is going to at least create another likely pedestrian bridge between Germantown and River North. But we know that East Nashvillians would love another access point. And I think getting to and from the airport to the East Bank is probably going to require one. Now, whether it's closer to Fessler's or whether it's closer to Driftwood, we haven't gotten that far yet, but it is definitely on the table.
It's definitely a conversation. See, you guys, that's why it's important that we're able to sit down with the mayor and actually have this conversation. So I also learned from your bio that you were a small business owner too.
Yep.
And so what kind of business? It didn't mention it. And then I also wanted to know what you had in plan to support entrepreneurs in the city.
Yeah. So it's fun to, I will say I guess I've had sort of 3 runs at it. One of them was a business I started with a friend where we were kind of in that space of, there was a moment where, as web design and development and technology-based businesses took off, we started jumping in at low cost, infrastructure and databases, working in the space where you could get freely available systems like Linux or MySQL and build an entire application around those systems. And so we had a consultancy, but kind of grew it into a toolkit that, especially as search engines came up, even before social media, starting to help people be able to gain visibility in that space. It was kind of like what became search engine optimization. We started doing that. It was a lot of fun. And then, we got to a point where I think we brought in another partner, and it's just one of those tough things that happens in business where sometimes not all the partners then wind up aligned.
Yeah.
And so it didn't work out and the company kind of went through a moment where they finally, I think, sold the business. But it was a great journey to get there and build something. And I would say at the end of the day, for me, it was a success story full of a lot of lessons, including just making sure, both from a business operations and legal standpoint, that, you keep as much alignment as you can, because business creates pressures even within the business among founders, especially if everybody's a first-time founder. And so
for sure,
there's a lot of lessons there.
Yeah.
Also at an agency kind of after that, focused on some really amazing clients in that same kind of vein. And, there too, it's just like one of the other lessons we drew from that experience is that first couple of hires matter so much for continuing. I mean, we had done very well at business development, but we needed to get that connected as quickly as possible into productivity. So another clear set of lessons there from an entrepreneurship standpoint of how important it is to hire well, especially in those first rounds, so that even if you get the great person, you need to get them connected to exactly what the business needs are, because otherwise you're growing your work,
but not able to scale the business because of the team.
Yep.
And which I've talked to quite a few people. I've had a few founders on the show and small business owners in Nashville. And for sure, every last one of them talks about being able to scale your business with the right team.
Yep.
And as far as finding the right team, this is another question that just came to my mind. I don't know why I didn't write it down, but when you become the mayor, do you get to hire your own team of people? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, you do pretty much. And so typically what will happen is, and this got disrupted in the middle of things when we had a mayor a few years ago who couldn't complete the term. But ordinarily, if you get elected like I did in 2023, there's a budget that's already in effect. And what that budget has in it is however many employees are in the mayor's office. And that is up to the mayor to staff all those positions. We intentionally kept some great people from Mayor Cooper's administration because I didn't want to, I didn't think it was appropriate to say goodbye to people who were already dedicated public servants, but 2, who were also excellent at their job, and 3, willing to stay even though they were going to be on a new team led by somebody different. But then we have spent this period of these first 100 days staffing into the remaining positions. And that is actually one of the best parts about it, is building that team, including Isaac Adai, who was one of our first hires, who is directly focused on small business entrepreneurs and making sure that
they have the resources.
That they have the resources, and particularly within the DBE community, where women and minority businesses that have not always been the focus of access to capital, channels of mentorship, that we are aligning government to make sure that they get as much support.
Gotcha. Good to know for all my women in business.
That's right.
You guys, Freddie O'Connell is doing the work behind the scenes for us. I have a couple more questions. I recently attended a parental safety controls with Meta event that they had here. Wow. And so that was really cool to see how Meta is tailoring social media to help parents and families better navigate it, to be a safe space. So I know social media and just media in general can be a circus, especially when it comes to politics. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on family safety on social media, but also just like political rhetoric being properly promoted on social media?
It's a real challenge because, we have a 12-year-old daughter, and she has a phone that she can call and text us on, but she does not have any social media accounts yet. And I will say, based on my experience over, I guess, the past 14, 15 years with social media, it is a real challenge. There's not really a code of conduct when you're out there on the whole internet. Yeah. And, there is a level of freedom to, it's the most interesting thing. I feel like I've started looking even this summer, as we got into the home stretch of the campaign and starting to take office, there's a lot of research about loneliness, the lack of actual connection, bullying online, unfortunately for young women in particular, and the results are not pretty. And I think some of it is the freedom that people feel both with anonymity, the freedom that people feel like, hey, I can kind of type it out, whatever. And I like, when you and I are sitting here talking, even if we just really couldn't stand one another, we're probably not going to go at each other.
Yeah, there's still a level of respect.
There's a level of, we're in this space, we are having a conversation, we are directly connected in the moment. Social media actually removes that. Yeah. And so I've also heard of, you probably, as somebody who's been in the influencer space, right? Finsta is a whole thing, right? And so I love the idea that Meta is doing that. Meta probably needed to be doing this about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But, it's that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago adage. Yeah. Like the fact that they're at least engaging in it now. I don't know, though. I can't say I'm excited about the day our daughter comes to us and says, hey, I want to get on Instagram. Because I've seen it. I've lived through it. There are some of my colleagues, some of the other people out there, we saw some people get very animated during the campaign. And this was the hard part, is we had some people who were passionate supporters of ours, not affiliated with us, just out there in the world, loving us and hating on others. And it's very challenging to go out one by one to each of those people and say, look,
calm down.
You can't, if you are going to be supportive of us, we've got other people out there and you're free to have your own opinion, but
Yeah, definitely. Because as a politician and a leader of this city, even though they may be for you, you still want to promote that they are civic and civilized in any affiliation with you.
And you see it. You see the full capacity of people to behave terribly, and actually remove respect. In fact, be actively disrespectful, and then go beyond that to the point of just spewing truly hateful stuff, malevolent stuff. And I think that's the part that's maybe the hardest of all, because we've seen the impact of bullying. We've seen the impact it has on levels of stress and mental health. And, I do want online spaces to be safe, but as much as that, I want people to remember
real life.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually said that one of the news reporters that was at the event interviewed me for that. And I said, as somebody who's worked in like corporate tech marketing and then also in the influencer space and am just an extrovert by nature, I want people to live in real life. Like, if anything, my daughter's 2 and I'm teaching her to communicate in real life. Like, every day I drop her off at school, we tell everybody good morning. And she goes, and I'm like, I don't care. I want her to say, like, I want her to be able to say what she's thinking and communicate that energy with people. So real life, folks, real life.
And that's the thing. A lot of the people that I wind up engaging with online, I also actually know them offline.
Yeah.
And I think that matters. And it also helps me ignore the people that just come at you with hate that you're just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, because you know that there are real people who have genuinely good hearts. Speaking of that, I want to talk about how, as a mayor, it's not all just beautiful speaking engagements and things. You have to deal with some heavy things. Even prior to you becoming the mayor, we had what happened at Covenant here in Nashville and the ongoing debate on gun control in Nashville and the state of Tennessee.
Yep.
And then we had the recent death of the Belmont student that you addressed on your social media, and just you're constantly having to deal with some heavy things. And so I want to know how you deal with them in private and then how you're able to address those as the leader of Nashville.
So I think they're balanced because I guess the good news for me, and we were talking, I think, before we started recording about the nonlinear journey of getting to this place. And it means that, I mean, a couple things. With Belmont specifically, we had so many Belmont students who had been a part of our campaign, several of them on our team as staff members or interns. And then similarly with the Covenant tragedy, that was also a close connection to our campaign team, where Alex, who you met today, you know, he's got a family connection to that school and that community. And so in some cases it was very grounding, and almost, I've described it to people, almost having a level of spiritual guidance on both of those scenarios, where I could reach out directly to the people at Belmont that I knew personally and be grounded by their experience, and then shape the conversation I was having with the university community and the broader Edge Hill community based on that. Same thing. I knew so many people in Edge Hill, in fact, had just been out there doing gun violence work and remembrance just before that additional tragic incident at Covenant. We had a very similar experience where the number of families I knew personally, I think that's one of the ways that has helped me to deal with it, is just growing up in Nashville, having exposure to a lot of the different communities that even as we've been impacted by tragedy or devastation, the tornado, the bombing on 2nd Avenue, the thing that makes me probably best able to deal with that at a personal level is I've, for better or for worse, had some level of personal connection into those events and into those places where I could have a personal response and get some guidance from somebody who had been more impacted by it. And that's a big advantage. It's, you know, in terms of then taking that around and dealing with it, it is heavy, and there's just no escaping the fact that in each of those cases, there is going to be profound grief. I mean, we know people that have endured loss of life, loss of property in this city, and there's nothing that helps someone recover fully from the loss of a child, right? Or from losing somebody to gun violence or being a victim of a crime. And so we just maintain an emphasis on safety. We try to amplify the connections that already exist right now, for instance, with Belmont University's security and Metro Nashville Police Department. We have tried to build out a fabric of second responders too, as we are bringing online clinical capacity in mental and behavioral health at the Metro Public Health Department. We put together a resource guide for people that we know locally are affected and their families overseas by the conflict in Israel and Palestine, right? So we we are trying to do everything within the power of local government to be there, to be a part of the support network.
I think those are all incredible things, especially because people don't realize how much local government does for them. Everyone thinks of the president and the presidential debate and just the White House and all the glory of it all. And it's like your local government really is making moves for you. Even living in Memphis and going to the University of Memphis, we actually had Memphis Police Department on campus. So Memphis, as wild as people say the city is, the University of Memphis is actually one of the safest campuses in Tennessee. So that was really cool to just feel safe going to school there. And I had a great time. We still go back to homecoming. We just went to homecoming a couple weeks ago. But I definitely think you do a good job of facing the things in the public that are happening in Nashville and leading people. So I give everyone their flowers when they come to the Sweet House. So I'm giving you your flowers on that.
Well, thank you.
And Bishop Walker is also another one that he has been on the podcast this season. He also does an incredible job at just servicing the entire Nashville community.
And he is someone who stays busy and present as well.
Yeah, he does, for sure. Everybody I've had on this season, we've had on the Titans GM this season.
Oh, yeah.
Rand.
Yeah.
Everybody's just been like, nobody's had a linear career. And nobody's had just like a story that was just, straight laced. It's all about the twists and turns of life. And it's just been good to hear from everybody. So I have just two more rapid questions, and then we'll wrap this straight up because he's the mayor of Nashville and he's busy. So what's your favorite part about Nashville?
The thing that brought me back here was fundamentally the people. And I think that's the thing that still is amazing. I'm one of the luckiest people because I just have so many incredible, creative, thoughtful people in my life that all call Nashville home. And that's the thing. I mean, second to that probably is also, again, a bias of probably having grown up here. But we're Music City.
We are.
I grew up with music in my household. My parents have this incredible vinyl collection. My dad's a songwriter.
Oh, wow.
We had a piano, and I got to learn how to play that just enough as a kid to know something about music. And I think that the people and the music are really special parts of Nashville that do make us unique as a city.
Yeah. I was just talking about Nashville in general, well, the whole state of Tennessee, and to Brian Berry, the publisher of Nashville Lifestyles. Yeah. And I said to him, people don't realize that Tennessee has carried the United States on our back. We have John Lewis, Martin Luther King,
the politics,
Tina Turner,
of all
the
of
politics,
it,
yes.
music,
yes.
political impact, civil rights.
Yeah.
I mean, having a vice president of the United States from here.
Yeah, we've carried the United States. And my sister's actually a musician, Valerie June, and we are from Jackson, Tennessee. Yeah. My dad was a music promoter.
Yep.
And we grew up in music. And between growing up in Jackson, and y'all, it's the only city between Memphis and Nashville. So growing up in Jackson, my parents would bring us to both Nashville and Memphis. Yep. My dad did a lot of construction projects in downtown Nashville, so it's always cool to tell people that. I'm like, my daddy had a crane in the sky before
it was cool.
Before it was cool. So it's just, it is a great state to be from. I have one last question, and then your communications team and everybody's probably like, this woman is never going to stop talking. But will your political career go beyond the mayor of Nashville?
Come back to that nonlinear part. If you'd asked me 10 years ago if I would ever run for office, that would have been a no. 2 years ago, if you'd asked me if I was going to run for mayor, that would have been a no. I guess I would not say never, but it's also, I've told many people this, if you are planning a life around politics, you're probably doing something wrong in the first place, right? I think
for sure.
The best part of my getting here was the fact that it was nonlinear. I will say I do have among, again, growing up in a place where I think national politics made me not even interested in being registered to vote, and then starting at the other end and engaging around the most local stuff, I still have a strong preference for local politics. I think that is where the level of community engagement is the greatest. I think it's where the conversations are the highest quality. It is not about nonsensical partisan bickering. It is not about scoring points for a team. It is about solving problems for people, and that is what I like doing best. And multiple people have talked about how not just being mayor, but being mayor of Nashville is one of the greatest jobs in the world. And even just a few weeks in, I very much feel that and live that, and am honored by the opportunity to do it. But it's also crazy because we were right at that point where we were about to be in our sweet spot as a family, where Whitney is a practicing physician. She's got her situation on lock. Our girls are having a great experience in our public school system. I had this great job and professional opportunity at HealthStream that I was not looking to leave. And then I just said, you know what, we're going to switch lanes.
Yeah.
So that was definitely not a part of a life plan, and neither is anything beyond this. I mean, I'm very lucky that I've been able to have a life not only filled with purpose, but with the flexibility to try to be on that path.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the Sweet House and
glad
sharing
to be
your
here.
lifestyle, nonlinear career trajectory, and just all of it. I feel like it's going to be so helpful to people. And I really want to hone in on one last thing that you mentioned is like, if you want to become a politician, it's like just having that as your goal is probably not the best way to go about it. I feel the same way working in social media in the influencer and podcast space. I'm like, when people say I want to be an influencer, I'm like, but what about everything else that you're supposed to be working on that could hone leadership skills, or it could hone tech marketing skills, or it could hone what are you doing to lead people or to problem solve, to help people? So yeah, it's the same way. It goes back to the real life connections that we're talking about in general. So I say kudos to you. Keep doing the people's work, or I call it the Lord's work because it is the Lord's work. You guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of The Sweet House, or listening if you're riding in your car listening to this episode. You guys follow Freddie O'Connell on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of it, because that is where you're going to get the latest updates from the man who's leading Nashville and also going to take us the next few years. So we're excited about it all, from the East Bank to the new Titan Stadium to, I'm sure there's projects that you weren't even able to tell us about. We're excited
We've
about.
We've got a long list. We've got a lot of work to do.
List. But make sure, lastly, that you guys check out Hub Nashville, because I personally would love for you all to submit some requests, because one request can't change the city, but many requests can make it happen.
That's it. I can be a lot of places, but we depend, and this was the same way as a council member. If you're somewhere and you see something, bring it up, because if I don't know, I can't fix it.
Absolutely. Well, you guys heard it right here first. Hub Nashville and Mayor O'Connell.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.